Omie 17. Chapter 1. Sprinkles on my birthday cake. The biomes were the last great adventure of humankind. They were built on terraformed asteroids to transport the human race to the stars and beyond, before Earth was destroyed by the swarm of intergalactic meteors that were due to arrive in 80 years. Each biome was built to align with the planet to which it was to travel. Some were deserts and some were jungles. They were all combinations of many factors of geology, atmosphere, temperature, and gravity. All were carefully designed to encourage adaptation of the inhabitants on the long trip across interstellar space. Upon arrival, the hope was that the biome dwellers would be suited to survival in their new home. Pandora Rao was rushing. She was collecting fizzler eggs, and her basket was nearly full. She walked softly to ease any ground vibrations that might alert the fizzlers squatting in the sand in front of her. Fizzlers were so commonly named for the sound the females made when they dug holes for their nests. It had spun down so that its body was completely buried in the sand, and the umbrella-like flange attached to its back was flared out, covering it completely. The umbrella was half covered with sand and nearly invisible, if it were not for the telltale edge. The secretions from the glands around the circumference of the umbrella had literally glued it to the ground. This was an adaptation that this leather-skinned, featherless bird used to protect the eggs it was now laying from predators. You had to approach the bird from behind and carefully dig down and under until you felt one of the eggs. You could take only one of the usual 3 the female laid. Their lifespan was short, and the bird must be allowed to reproduce offspring. Pandora crept slowly up to the bird and began to worm her hand into the sand. The birds were very skittish, and this one fluttered its umbrella. The flutter was the muscles undulating in an effort to keep the umbrella tightly pressed to the ground. If you disturbed one, she would run away, abandoning her eggs. She would not lay another clutch until she came into contact with a suitable male. Female fizzlers were particular about their mates. You could get 3 eggs, but that female would not lay again for some time. It was better to take only 1 egg and encourage the numbers of laying fizzlers. Pandora breathed quietly and concentrated on calming images and sounds of wind gusting over sand and sand shifting softly over the bird's back. The fizzler's umbrella slowed its fluttering and settled back over the clutch of eggs. Pandora felt her fingers touch one of the warm, smooth eggs, and she eased it down into the hole she dug with her hand. She grabbed it and slowly lifted it out and into her basket. She pushed sand back to fill the hole. She stood and tiptoed backwards away from the bird. It wouldn't miss the egg and would sit with the flesh umbrella glued to the ground until the other 2 hatched. Pandora reached into her pouch and took a small red flag on a stick and stuck it gently in the ground. This was an indicator to others that this fizzler had been harvested. She had a full basket. Her little brother would have to clean the eggs in her basket and store them away. She walked quickly back and slipped into the kitchen of the small cottage that housed her, her brother, her grandmother, and her father. Pandora was 3rd generation Omie, biome dweller. She'd been born and always lived on biome 6, and today was her birthday. Her grandmother was making a cake. They'd been preparing the stevia extract from the garden. Sugar manufactured from sugar beets was expensive, and white beet sugar imported from the planet was a luxury that the Rao family could not afford. So stevia, grown in the garden and extracted from the leaves, was what had been used for baking ever since her grandmother had come to Biome 6 as a child. Her parents, Pandora's great-grandparents, had won the lottery and had been placed on Biome 6, although 1 was a contentious term in the biomes after 3 generations of seemingly endless toil. The biomes were designed to be self-sufficient. Imports from the planet below were frowned upon. Some luxury items still made it by the security protocols. In a short 80 years, by last account, there would be no Earth from which to get anything. They would be sailing out to the stars when the interstellar swarm of asteroids and pseudo-planets swept through the Orion arm of the Milky Way galaxy and picked up the few specks of dust that is our solar system. Pandora did not want to think about it. It really was of no concern. She would be, at worst, a very old woman and more likely dead. There was even some that said they'd heard that the swarm had been pushed off course by some black holes and would miss the Earth entirely. They said it would only take a little nudge while the swarm was so far away to alter the course enough to miss. It was an Earth government plot to keep them here so they could use the Omies for their experiments. That was Gilly's latest theory. The politicians and the scientists were simply using the biomes as their private laboratories. Gilly was Pandora's little brother. He saw himself as the first Omie to win a Nobel Prize. He didn't know if he wanted one. He didn't know if he wanted the one for physics or the one for mathematics. Lately, he decided he would not have to choose. He would accept both. The amazing thing is that Pandora thought he was smart enough to actually do it. Pandora carefully washed 3 of the eggs for the cake her grandmother was going to bake for her birthday. The rest she left for Gilly to clean. She checked the pantry and saw that all the other ingredients were there, including berry jam for the topping. She'd seen real cakes on the family holo projector, cakes as big as she was, covered in massive amounts of real sugar icing. What she really wanted was a birthday cake covered with white icing and sprinkles, multicolored bits of sugar all over the top. Pandora had never had sprinkles before, and she didn't even know if they were hard or soft. In the pictures, they looked hard. That would be wonderful. Fluffy white sugar, sweet icing with sprinkles on top. That would be the best birthday cake ever. But she was sure she would have to make do with berry jam sweetened, as was the cake, with stevia extract. Pandora slipped out of the house. It was her birthday, and she wanted to spend what was left of the day doing what she loved. Pandora tiptoed into the jungle that practically grew right up to the house. The narrow path wound its way to the base of a small mountain. It was really just a hill by Earth standards. Biome 6 was the only biome that could boast mountains. When the biomes were formed, the builders towed asteroids into Earth orbit and began the process of sculpting them into suitable shapes. The Biome 6 asteroid had 2 iron-based hills. At first, the builders were going to remove them, but they discovered that removing the hills would jeopardize the integrity of the asteroid, so they left them in place. They used the tallest to support a section of the dome that covered the whole asteroid. It was named by the Omies Sky Mountain because it looked like it held up the sky. The other was named Far Point because it was at the northern section of the biome. Pandora followed the path behind her house up the side of Far Point Mountain until she arrived at her favorite spot. A small outcrop with a boulder in the shape of a lounge chair beckoned her. It was covered with a gray-green moss, just like a blanket. She lay down on the rock and looked out over her home. To the west, she could see Sky Mountain. She could see where the edge of the dome met the wall of rock that surrounded the donut-shaped valley formed by the mountain, providing an enclosure from the lethal vacuum of space. The artificial sun was setting behind Sky Mountain. The shadows were long. She was now a year older. 1 more year, and she could make decisions for herself. No more following the plan her father and grandmother set out for her. She could study whatever she chose to study. No more restrictions just because she was a girl. No more gardening, no more collecting eggs. She could actually become something here in Biome 6. She liked the idea of working to become a council member like her mother had been, and not a stay-at-home slave to some awful husband. Yuck! She said out loud to no one. Pandora thought of her mother. She was dead. At least, that's what everyone had told her since she was a little girl. Her mother was involved in an accident on a trip to the planet. She was killed when something or other malfunctioned. She'd heard 10 different stories, and as a result, she believed none of them. Her mother had died, that was a fact. Her grandmother had raised her and was trying to make her do and be what Pandora's mother never would. 1 more year, she said aloud. 1 more year, and I'm done with it all. Pandora had no idea what she would actually do, but living in a hut with some ugly, stupid husband was not it.